Let's do it.
This is the SEC Insider Hit. And it's presented by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi. It's good to be blue.
And good morning. Welcome in. Out of bounds. Our friend Mike Detillier, NFL Insider, covering the draft for well over 30 years. It's right around the corner. We're going to get him to share a draft story here coming up in just a second. How Sean Payton, I guess among others, fell in love with Reggie Bush out of Southern Cal. Man, oh man, did he turn the country upside down. The Trojans, Pete Carroll, and Reggie was a highlight reel. Now I think he does an amazing job on TV with the Fox Game Day show. But Mike Detillier joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. This is 105.9 The Zone ESPN. You can watch the show right now on YouTube. Search Out of Bounds Sports. Watch it on YouTube. Search Out of Bounds Sports. We bring in WWL Radio TV New Orleans, Mike Detillier, to the show. Mike D, walk us through the story on the how and the when with Sean Payton and the Saints and when he fell in love with Reggie Bush, and then, of course, Reggie becoming the number 2 pick in the first round for the Saints that year.
Yeah, he didn't think he would get him, to be honest with you. I think he was the guy that they would love to have gotten pre-draft. Sean spoke about it, that he was the guy, but they thought he was going to go to Houston, and Charlie Casserly was a GM there. And Sean had his eyes on Jay Cutler. I'll be honest with you. That was one of the things. He eyed up Jay Cutler pretty good. And he didn't know about Drew, how quickly he could come back from the surgery. There was some talk of trade down because that would have meant they would have gotten Mario Williams, who ended up going the first overall pick. And so, they were still kicking that around, and then the word got out of Houston that they were going to pick Mario Williams. And that was it. Sean immediately turned over. They got a lot of phone calls about Reggie. I know the Jets were really interested. So were the Titans in Reggie, turned it down. Reggie's people got in touch with Sean and said, listen, Reggie would rather not play there. He would rather go somewhere else. And Sean gave him the famous FU, and we're going to pick him. And that was Sean. And Reggie has said the exact same story Sean told Bobby and I, that he told his people, hey, you can holler all you want, we're going to pick you. And that's just the way it is. And so
Reggie wanted to go to a bigger market, and the Saints had
he wanted to go.
They had not won like Sean would eventually win over the next 15 years. So he was thinking losing franchise and New Orleans is small, right, Mike?
Yeah. Another thing too is this is less than a year from Hurricane Katrina,
right?
And so there's a lot of things swirling here at this point in time. And I give it to Reggie. Once Sean gave him the comment that you coming here, I don't care if you like it or not. Reggie went along. He was great. He really was unbelievable. The longest lines I've ever seen for an autograph. At one time, I would have put Drew Brees in the number 1 spot, but Reggie would have been a close second.
Wow.
Yeah, we had events Reggie signed, and you could barely see the end of the line. And so, yeah, he was unreal with it, and he turned out to be just a terrific player. He wasn't maybe the superstar player he was at USC, but he was a really good player.
He was.
As a runner, receiver, return man. And boy, when Deuce was healthy, and they had that 1-2 tandem, they were difficult. They were really difficult to go up against. So, but yeah, Sean had made up his mind long before that, if Reggie's there, we're going to pick him. But I think he would even admit, and he told us, I didn't think the Texans would pass on Reggie. He didn't think Casserly would go with Mario Williams. And Mario ended up being a really good player in the NFL, too, now. Nothing against what he did, but I think they felt at that time, and I think most people did, that Reggie would end up in Houston. And didn't turn out that way, and that happened a Friday. That's when the draft was Saturday and Sunday. And, it happened a Friday afternoon late on a Chris Martinson report. That's how Sean heard.
Mort.
Yeah, Mart got it, and he got it directly from Casserly, that was going to be the case. And Sean started drawing up plans for Reggie at supper time. That he had went eat out that night. He had told us he was eating out and drawn up plans, and he said, sure enough, that phone call came in from Reggie's people. But I'm really not sure what you guys are going to do. But Reggie'd rather not play in New Orleans. There's a lot of different circumstances with it. And Sean gave him that famous line, just 2 words, and he's going to get picked by us, like it or not.
Mm-hmm. Mike Detillier talking Saints, Reggie Bush. Mike, I know you remember. You remember the Monday Night Football game against the Vikings where he took 2 back and almost took a third back?
Almost had a third.
Yeah, he stumbled at around the 45-yard line or 40-yard line or something.
Yeah, he was fabulous. He really was. Now, early in training camp, what we saw was he always thought he could outrace people to the edge.
Mm-hmm.
Because he did it, in high school and college. It wasn't the case in the NFL. And I think it was a real learning experience for him that, hey, the NFL was going to be a little different. The only cat that, man, I saw veteran players doing this, was when they decided Reggie had sustained some injuries, and so they moved on from Reggie, and they went to Darren Sproles. And okay, you look at him on the hoof, and you take a look at him, man, he's 5'5", and maybe 190 pounds or so, soaking wet. And the first time he catches a ball out in the flat, and you saw him pull away from people, you saw those veteran players. Hey man, what next rep? Hey rookie, you in there? You get in there going up against Sproles. No, they didn't want nothing to do with it. They didn't want nothing to do with Darren. Again, I hear this all the time, and I can't build a team off outlier players. You can't. But there are always people that don't fit the mold. Darren Sproles was one of those guys that you looked at him, Bo. I could have snuck him into a high school game. And people, they wouldn't have known size-wise until he touched the ball. But, man, he, in practices, Reggie was unbelievable in the practice sessions. Now, he had to learn that not everything was to the edge. Sproles was a different guy from even Reggie in that you saw veteran guys skipping them reps. I don't want nothing to do with him. It was quite the difference seeing the look on them the first time they saw him run with the ball or touch the ball, catching the ball coming out of the backfield. He was phenomenal. He really was, and really ended up being a really good NFL player. If there was an NFL Hall of Very Good, Darren Sproles would be in there.
Oh, I loved him. I don't think there's any doubt. So with Reggie, it was kind of a circus because he was such a star coming out of college. What was he like? I mean, I actually went out to training camp just because of Reggie Bush when they had the training camp at Millsaps.
Yeah.
And I don't run out to 120-degree practices just to, watch that stuff.
It was brutal. Those practices.
Brutal, all right? And this is before you and I knew each other. I'm sure you came up too. But the only reason why I went to Saints practices as media when they were at Millsaps is because of Reggie Bush, Mike.
Yeah, he was good with the media. You could tell he was experienced. he knew not to handle some questions which may have been sort of controversial. He kind of walked around it. You could tell not a lot of guys were like that. He was, though. He really was. He was experienced with the media, handled it well. He was a superstar. He was really the star before Drew.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we didn't know anything about Drew because, watching him in practice, I never saw him throw a football more than 15, 18 yards downfield. And Zach told me the story later, like, why you didn't see it, he couldn't. And then he said by the third preseason game, Zach said, I saw him throw a pass that was about 25 yards because they had told him, hey, listen, it's all of a sudden going to happen for you. And then, Drew became Drew. But it wasn't until like the third preseason game that year that we saw it. Training camp, man, I'm wondering, how are they going to make this work? Because you could tell Drew was so accurate. But the ball didn't go downfield much. And, I was wondering how they're going to make this kind of work with that's going to be their offense. And then we saw him throw one. And I'm going to say it was like 25, 28 yards downfield. And I had a friend of mine who was on the staff, and he had tipped me off, hey, listen, we think it's getting closer because he's feeling stronger in the shoulder. And sure enough, he whipped one out. It was dead on for about like 28 yards downfield. And Drew became the guy. But Reggie was the star even before he took one snap because those credentials that he came in with, very few people picked by this organization had. Now, it was a different world. Archie may have come in with more fanfare because of the fact he was from Ole Miss. But it was a different world in 1971 than it was back in 2006. Totally different world. And it would be totally different today with a guy like Reggie coming to the Saints.
Mike Detillier, WWL Radio, TV New Orleans, talking Saints, and Reggie Bush. He was a star before Drew. How about that? It was crazy. And I remember those Millsaps practices. Mike D joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Mike, we were doing a little crack research today. Other than Archie, the Saints haven't drafted another quarterback in the first or second round. The highest was third round. Now, I know how they got Drew through that transaction and their current guy in Derek Carr, but isn't that crazy that we were looking at how many other franchises have drafted multiple QBs in the first round over, 45 years?
Yeah, Dave Wilson actually back Bum's first year, 81.
Oh.
Dave Wilson got picked in the supplemental draft in round one.
Gotcha.
They ended up giving up a first round pick in 82.
Okay.
So I guess technically it was Dave, who was a really good guy here. Put up some really big numbers at Illinois. Bum wasn't sure about the quarterback situation here, and actually dealt Archie off. And Archie always tells the story about, I could forgive Bum for trading me, but I couldn't forgive Bum for trading me to the Oilers.
Yeah, no kidding.
They were worse. They were worse off than the Saints. And so that's an Archie line, but it is true. And so yeah, they did pick Dave back in 81 in that summer supplemental draft, and ended up giving up their first round pick in 82. But yeah, that's a long stretch of time, and they're not gonna. And unless some kind of way Hooker would last to them, I don't see them doing that again.
Right. Derek Carr, now the QB1 for the New Orleans Saints. Mike Detillier, WWL Radio, TV New Orleans. Who was a bigger? Well, you mentioned Archie and Reggie. So did Reggie trump the Ricky Williams stuff as far as all the hype and hub?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Not by a lot.
Okay.
Yes. I never saw a crowd react like it did when the Saints got Ricky, because you didn't know they were going to get Ricky. You didn't know he was going to fall to you. And then that trade to move up to get him. And everybody was all excited, and I'm doing an interview, and we didn't know all the details. I'm doing an interview with my old friend Ro Brown from WDSU Channel 6 in New Orleans, and I saw the details of the trade. And Ro had a great line. He was like, Mike, I'm going to let you break him the news how much you had to give up to get him.
Oh.
Yeah. But, yeah, that was a lot of excitement with Ricky. But I think, you knew the afternoon before you were going to get Reggie. You didn't know that with Ricky. They had been trying all week long to try to get a deal to get Ricky Williams, and were unsure what the Colts were going to do at that point. And then Polian decides to go with Edgerrin James instead, and that turned out to be quite a pick for them. Edgerrin James, I think he was one of the most underrated superstars in the NFL. If you look at it in that time frame, he got overshadowed because, Peyton was there and they had, Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne. But, man, Edgerrin James was unbelievable. Then he played a preseason game. And Edgerrin James looks like he was the anchor on the 4x400-meter relay team, and Ricky was running the second leg. And Ricky was a good NFL player. See, that's a false narrative that Ricky didn't play well in the NFL. Look at his numbers in the NFL. Ricky put up some really big numbers. Now, Ricky's issued today. I don't know how the NFL would handle it, but, he had issues, and he has admitted to it. That's looked at a little bit differently today, marijuana today. It's looked a little differently. But Ricky was difficult at times to deal with. I think he felt the pressure of him being the guy that carried this franchise with Mike Ditka, because Mike labeled him, he's my new Walter Payton. Okay, you coming in, man, that's a lot of water in the bucket for you to carry. A lot. But you didn't know that on draft day. And again, draft day back then was a Saturday. We were doing it at the Saints camp outside. And, man, the reaction for Ricky was unbelievable until everybody figured out what they had to give up to get him. So we get Mike on stage, and my uncle used to play golf with him. And, he comes up on stage, and he asks me, how's your Uncle Harvey doing? I said, he's doing good. He said, he's playing golf tomorrow. I said, yeah, he normally plays on Sundays. He said, good, I don't have any draft picks. I'll see him on the golf links.
Incredible.
That was Mike. I mean, but that was Ditka being Ditka. I mean, that's just the way he was. Didn't have any picks. Why should he be there?
And then Ricky Williams had Master P as his agent, and that was wild back then. Yeah, so Ditka traded away all the picks in the 99 draft. The second-round pick had already been traded to the Rams.
For Eddie Kinnison. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I see that right here. Who do you think is the best first-round pick in the history of New Orleans Saints?
Whoa. Longevity and time. You think about, Wayne Martin on defense and where you picked him. Wayne Martin played a long time in this league. He was a really good pick in round one. Jim Dombrowski also was a really good offensive lineman for a long time. Still lives in the area. Archie certainly had his run. He really did. He was on a bad team, but he was the one guy that you could pick out and say, he gave this franchise some credibility at that point in time. I'll tell you the most talented. It's easy. And he's still, for me, the most talented Saints player they've ever had on this franchise. Chuck Muncie.
Oh, wow.
Chuck, because Hank Stram told me this, because he worked with us here, I guess 5 years. I think 5 years. And he told me, Mike, other than Jim Brown, I've never seen somebody more physically gifted than Chuck. But, Chuck had some issues, too. Chuck would leave, he'd play a game on Sunday. He'd leave, get dressed in the locker room, and then you wouldn't see him all week long until the Saturday. And he'd come into the Saints training camp with the same clothes that he left the Sunday afternoon with.
What in the world?
Oh, no, Chuck burned the candle on both ends.
I got you.
Oh,
Eric Coryell was able to get him right. I mean, that's where he really hit his strike. Because with Fouts and Coryell and Winslow Sr. is when Muncie really had the juice, right, Mike?
Yeah, and Chuck was a big man. I mean, he was no small back. Chuck was almost 6'3". I think he was, depending on when you weighed him, he was anywhere from 230 to 245 pounds.
Wow.
No, Chuck was a huge man. And Stram told me the story that he had not practiced one snap. He strolls in on a Saturday and he told Chuck, listen, I'm finding you for every practice you miss every day. And Chuck was, go ahead and do it. It doesn't matter to me. But I'm playing the game, right? And, Hank was like, yeah, you're playing in the game. Hank said, no practice, no nothing. He carried the ball 28 times, rushed for 155 yards, and he caught 6 passes coming out the backfield.
Wow.
But he said, hey, Mike, how many guys can do that, in this world? But Chuck's off-the-field stuff got so out of hand in 1980, they had no choice but to deal him off. And his life straightened out. He was better in San Diego than he was here with the Saints, but, he also had some talent surrounding him now. Because, man, when you talk about a guy like Charlie Joyner and Kellen Winslow, man, and Dan Fouts at quarterback. He had Archie here, but still, man, he had a star-studded lineup there. He was really good. But, man, Chuck was a big, big man. And talent, my goodness, if he would have had his life straightened out, he may have put these records, where it would have been really difficult for people. But he sort of played when he wanted to. That was part of Chuck's, I guess, resume. That when he wanted to play hard, but he looked out and they had him and Tony Galbraith together. And those two guys were really, really something special. But their defense was lousy, absolutely lousy. So they was having to score 34 to 40 points a game to win because their defense wasn't very good. But if you talk about pure talent, Chuck Muncie was it. He really was. He was unbelievable. But again, God bless his soul. He straightened out his life, and he had a short life. But man, he was special. Well, he really was. Any guy that don't practice and can put up those type numbers,
that's incredible.
Against NFL defenses is unbelievable.
Wow. Mike Detillier, NFL Draft Insider, WWL Radio TV, New Orleans. Take care, Mike. Appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you, Bo.
If you want to work with the best in the business, choose Sound and Communications. The absolute leader in top quality audio and visual, powered by SoundcomAV.com. Their new headquarters in Pearl, right around the corner from RPT Commercial. Sound and Communications, SoundcomAV.com. Brad Henderson at 9:30.